Well, Taylor's in Europe, and we decided, fuck the guy. He can stay in Europe because we got Lo back in the studio. What up, Lo?
Back.
Your words, not mine.
Lauren Skankey sitting down with us, hanging out. What a delight. So good to see you.
Good to see you guys too, and good to be back.
Yeah, congratulations. You got a new house.
I do.
That's very exciting.
It's still standing. It survived the hurricane.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I know that there's likely some new folks that listen to the podcast that haven't been around for that long. And if you are new to the show, Lauren was our first hire and stuck around with us for like a little over a year. And it was the fucking best. We'd have you on Fecal Fridays. Always fun to have you like chiming in. And then you got like the dream job of a lifetime. And it took up way too much of your time to be hanging out with us yokels. So we miss you, but to have you here today, I mean, what a fucking
treat.
What a treat, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I would also add that I think the people who miss you, I wouldn't say more than us, but equally as much is the Discord community. Like,
Yeah, our patrons,
like
big time.
The old sweet potatoes.
Yeah.
I love me some yams. I love me some sweet potatoes. And I'll give a shout out to Stina, who I saw in the wild this summer.
Oh,
Yeah, when I was slinging beers at the Brightwood Beer Garden downtown Dartmouth.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. She showed up and we had a nice little chat.
Sweet,
so shout out to
sweet. Yeah.
Stina. Yeah.
Stina's been just given the goods with Feel Good Friday content.
If I had to wager a guess, I would say that she's provided some content for this week.
She has not. This
Damn.
is all
Stina.
this is all from my own little treasure trove of weirdness from
I've
the
seen her
internet.
posting online, so I've seen it. I've seen her posting online.
I got a bunch of shit to get into, but before I do, I got a kind of a little story. So, I just recently got back from a short little weekend vacation down in California. I went down to Daze, which was a really fun outdoor music festival. Took place on a beach in the desert. It was fucking beautiful. But I had a little incident had happened down there.
Did you poop?
No, aside from that one, one that didn't directly involve me, but it did involve me in terms of the incident at large. I had to kind of hop into my EMS sort of like first responder training,
And
it was wild. It was a really wild experience. I got jacked up. It was really fascinating and very exciting. And it made me realize that like, I think my calling in life, which has passed, but I think I would have made a really great paramedic. Because so I'll preface this with, I really enjoyed the experience. Yeah. Although there was someone who was not okay, and I didn't enjoy that part.
You mean you enjoyed it in the sense that you felt comfortable in the uncomfortable?
Yes, and very calm,
right,
and cool.
So I felt that way when Taylor and I found the guy in the Calgary airport because I had a previous experience.
Yes,
where I had to be in a situation like that. As soon as you start talking about this, like I realized like how much like residual trauma is in my brain about these experiences, because like as soon as you start talking about that, like my brain just goes like immediately back to my experience. And when we were in the Calgary airport traveling out west a few weeks ago, it was so weird being back in that place where this experience had happened to me. And like, man, these events like stick with you.
It does. Yeah. So I didn't feel traumatized by it at all. I felt pretty good about it afterwards. And again, like I felt like I hadn't had coffee that morning. I didn't need coffee that day. I was like jacked the fuck up. So I'll quickly go through the story. So this festival it's a camping festival. So, a large portion of the people at this festival are camping just outside of the festival grounds in this beautiful national park called Lake Paris National Park. Mm-hmm. And there's shower and bathroom facilities in the campground, which is great for a festival. It's fucking having a shower at a festival, let me tell you. Life changer. So second day, we wake up. It's the day that Tame Impala is playing. So there's going to be like a massive crowd of people coming in for the show, just specifically for that show. And Kira goes to take a shower. So she's like, I'm going to go shower. She hops in the shower. And while she's in the shower, our tent is about 50 feet from this shower facility. every morning there's a lineup of dudes waiting to get in the shower and a lineup of ladies, people just like waiting.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm at the campground about to start making coffee, and I hear this young woman start yelling, "Is there a doctor? Is there a nurse? Is there a doctor? Is there a nurse?" So I hear this, immediately get up, and I'm like, Kira, go. So I just like run to the bathroom.
I thought you were going to say that you immediately got up and you were like,
I have a podcast.
I thought you would have been because when I hear that now when I'm on a plane and somebody's like, "Is there a doctor on board?" I'm like, it just makes me feel bad. I don't even think of the situation. I'm like, I wish I had my honorary doctorate.
No.
That's all I think about. And I was just wondering if you just froze and you just started to go down this like
why
rabbit hole thing. Like,
well, no, my first thought was Kira, my lovely partner, is a CVICU nurse. She's like she's like an intense nurse, like she's witnessing crazy shit every day. So I go, Kira's a nurse. I got this. So I run towards the woman yelling, which is at this bathroom stall. And when I start to get down there towards her, I see a guy laying on the ground and another young woman running while I'm running. We're kind of like gonna get there at the exact same time. And as this confluence happens, she goes, "I'm a nurse." And I go, "Okay, cool. Don't need Kira. Like, too many cooks in the kitchen. Let's just let this woman take over." So I get there with her and I take the young man's head and he's laying on his side and there's a guy there who witnessed the whole thing. So I said, "Hey, what happened?" And the guy goes, "I don't know. I was talking to him. He just went down. And like, I don't know what happened. He hit his head a little bit, but like not too hard." And so I was like, "Okay, do you know him?" He was like, "No." And I was like, "Does anyone know if he took anything?" The guy is like eyes rolled in the back of his head. He's drooling.
Mm-hmm.
He's groaning this like painful groan, and he's not responsive. Like we're like, "Hey, what's your name? What's your name?" Nothing.
Mm-hmm.
So I look at the nurse as I'm asking these questions, basically looking to her to be like, "Okay, give me guidance and I'll support you." And when I looked at her, she was ghost white. She was terrified. Like I could see her like trembling. And in that moment I went, "Okay, fuck this, Kira, go." So I stood up, ran around like to the other side of this complex where the female shower was. And I bust the door open. There's all these women in there. This fucking guy comes in and I go, "Oh my God, I'm so sorry." I like, cover my face and I go, "Kira," she's in the shower. I go, "Kira," she goes, "What?" I go, "Get out here now. Stop the shower. There's a guy on the ground. I need your help." So I come back to the guy. Now there's like a crowd building around this guy. Again, there's people talking and they're like, I don't know what happened. I don't know what's going on. So I just looked up and I go, "Narcan. If anyone has Narcan, go now."
Mm-hmm.
2 or 3 people like kind of like run off and I can hear them like yelling for Narcan or naloxone.
Man, isn't it crazy when you're standing there and there's a group of people that form in those
Just
situations and
standing.
how people just nobody knows what to do?
People just get like frozen. They just don't know, right? Mm-hmm. And so luckily a couple of people like got it and they ran off to try to find naloxone or Narcan or something. By this time, Kira comes out soaking wet. Her fucking hair is wet. She's like covered in a towel. So I tell her everything that I know. And she's trying to like talk to this guy. Again, nothing. He's just like groaning, eyes rolling in the back of his head, and like more drool is just like coming out of his mouth.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm immediately going, he's OD, like fentanyl or something. Like he's ODing. An ER nurse shows up now. And so her and Kira start like kind of doing like medical talk to each other.
Mm-hmm.
And someone shows up and they go, "I got Narcan." So I go, "Give it to me." I open it up, pull it out, and it's the like nasal spray Narcan. So I look at Kira and she takes it and she's like, "All right, I'm gonna give it to him." And I was like, "Fucking do it, like give it to him right now." And she's like, "Okay." So she goes, "All right, I'm gonna put this in your nose and give this to you." She like says it to him. As she puts the thing in his sinuses, she doesn't pop it yet. She puts it in and he like pulls away. He's like, he just like says, he's like, "Ah," like tries to like get away from it.
Yeah.
She goes, no. And she like holds him. She puts it in. She goes, pops it. Immediately the guy goes, like fucking tries to get
turn
up.
back on.
Oh, back online, sort of. Not fully, like back online with like there's a virus in the system.
Like 30% online, but much more online than before.
Maybe like 5% online. Like he comes online enough to like it looks like he wanted to get up and run. So of course we're like, no, you're okay. We pick him up. Someone brought a chair where we put him in a chair, and we just start talking to him now. And he's this was the part that I found so fascinating. I've never been in the presence of someone who was so not attached to our reality. Like we got his name. We knew his name. He said that. We got his girlfriend's name, and that's all we could get. So I said, like, do you have a wallet? Do you have your wallet on you? And he would like look at his hand, and he had this like Tame Impala tattoo, and he just started like scratching. He goes, here's my wallet, and like just handing his hand to nothing. And I was like, oh my God, that's so like jarring and weird and eerie. And he didn't know what year it was. He didn't know where he was. Like he didn't know much. But then the ER nurse was like, hey, can I ask you something? Do you have seizures? And it was like, all of a sudden he like came to, and he goes, yeah, sometimes I do. And I was like, oh, that was weird. And then he's kind of like went right back to that sort of like detached, not really sure of anything.
Whoa.
EMS shows up. They take him away. Everyone was fucking frazzled. I was like, whoa, that was fucking exciting. Like that, man, that's
the way that I was after.
Yeah, I was like, that was so crazy. Well, anyway, it turns out we ended up finding out that they found his girlfriend. Turns out he has epilepsy, hadn't had a seizure in years, had one of the worst seizures of his life that moment.
Whoa.
Now, whether or not drugs are involved, I don't know. Like who knows if there was something else going on, but man, I'll tell you, to see Narcan work the way it worked.
How does that work? Like,
is wild.
Do you know if somebody has seizures and that was like, say, for example, hypothetically, it was just a full blown
seizure, no drugs at all. Yeah,
seizure, no drugs at all. Can Narcan turn you back online with that? Like what would happen if you took Narcan like that? Because it's not meant for that, right?
No, it's not. So info@sickboypodcast.com if you have an answer to this, that and especially if I have the wrong one. But me and Kira talked about that, and she was like, well, so Narcan is like an opioid blocker. Mm-hmm. I think that's what's happening there. So it like blocks your opioid receptors, and that's the thing that like brings you awake if you're having an overdose. But Kira was like, I could imagine, like if he was having just a seizure, I could imagine that thing, like, because when she clicked that thing, it was like, so like it's obviously driving something with force up his fucking sinuses. And I'd imagine that probably hurts. I can't imagine that it's like Flonase or something where you're just like, whatever's in that Narcan, I'm sure is like, oh fuck, it's kind of like, oh Jesus Christ. So it could have been that. It could have been like just the sheer force of this thing blasting into his face, like kind of, like if like it was either that or like I just slapped him, like maybe something brought him up.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Maybe he had, maybe he took some like ketamine or something, and there was something in it that led to, maybe a double whammy of like a slight overdose and a seizure. I don't know, but yeah, it was fucking whack.
It's wild to like, those situations are so intense, especially as somebody who, like, say you only have like first aid training.
Yeah.
There's so many things that could be happening in those situations.
100%.
Like whether it's like cardiac arrest, overdose, seizure, and it seems it's so like unclear as somebody who like has just taken a first aid training on like how to best support in those situations.
Yeah.
Like as somebody who's done chest compressions in two different scenarios where one was probably the right situation and one was probably the wrong situation. Almost definitely was the wrong situation.
With Taylor, yes, where he broke his rib cage. Yeah,
but it's overwhelming to like think about like, well, I mean, how do you respond in these situations?
That's why like when that ER nurse was like, "Do you have seizures?" Like when it first came out of her mouth, I remember thinking, "Well, that's a dumb question. This isn't a seizure. He's overdosing." And then when he went, "Yeah, I do," I went, "Oh, okay. Well, you're the nurse. So I guess that's why I'm not a fucking. I'm not a doctor."
Was she taking like other shots in the dark or asking other
questions?
No,
that was the one thing that she just went,
damn,
I think this is a seizure. And she nailed it. Yeah, she was on. Like it was really wild.
I'm imagining like being in that situation and you have, like say it was like anaphylactic shock and there was somebody there and they were on their own and they had peanuts and had a severe peanut allergy and you didn't know that, but also you had Narcan, you had an EpiPen and Narcan. So like what do you do in that situation?
The one thing that I have been told with Narcan is that, if you give Narcan and it's not needed, it's not gonna do a bunch of harm.
Yeah.
Right. Same with like chest compressions.
Yeah.
Unless
Unless it's Taylor and
same.
you, yes.
Yeah. Right. But in worst case, you break their ribs, which is actually like not the worst.
Not nearly as bad as having cardiac arrest.
All right, Brian. Say that to your own self to make you feel better about yourself.
Guys, I sat by and watched somebody die doing chest compressions. So I have severe trauma from that.
The part of it that
one might say Taylor also has severe trauma from that.
He shouldn't fucking pass out on his own.
The thing though that really stood out to me and that I want to reiterate, which I think is really important, is that when I requested Narcan and those people ran off to different camps, not knowing if anybody had it, we had 2 separate people from 2 separate directions bring 2 separate boxes of Narcan. And for that, I was really proud and really grateful that the community that we were surrounding ourselves with at this festival were people that knew like harm reduction techniques, that knew that this is an important thing to have on hand. And again, like if you're someone who, this is a psych rock music festival. Everybody's doing fucking acid. Like everybody's on drugs. And if you know you're going to be in that environment, then prep yourself, like have those things on hand. I almost packed my naloxone kit, but I wasn't sure if I'd be allowed to like go through customs with that or something. Mm-hmm. So, but the fact that some people had some Narcan there was really, it was just really nice to like see that in that community.
That is a good question. If you can fly, if you're listening right now and you know that whether or not you can cross borders with naloxone, that would let us know,
because you can fly with EpiPens, right? Like you can fly with meds. So
I would guess you can, but also, I probably wouldn't myself take the risk until I looked into it.
I wouldn't even want the customs agent to be like, why do you have this? Man, I don't need any red flags on my shit. So, okay. That story's over. Let's move on. It's spooky time, spooky season. I don't have anything to add to this other than just the photo that I saw on Reddit, and it blew my mind. What do you guys think this is?
Oh, it's a face transplant for sure.
Wow, good job, Brian. Lo, tell our listeners that are just listening that aren't subscribed to your YouTube channel, whatever the fuck they're doing with their lives, what we're looking at right now.
So you see a bunch of folks in scrubs. There's a lady taking a picture of something that is on a table. Everyone's surrounding this table. They're looking down at it, and it looks like a half a face or part of a face just flat on a table.
It looks like this.
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
It looks like Leatherface from Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Jared just lifted up his sweater. He has a Texas Chainsaw Massacre
thank you.
shirt on right now.
That photo is wild. It's a face transplant, and they just took his face off.
I knew that was going to happen. I was just waiting until that happened.
Face off is real. Isn't that cool? What a cool thing. I love that.
Can you choose someone based on how good looking they are for your face transplant?
Amazing would that be?
Is there a catalog?
Can you imagine?
Where it could be like, this is a butterface. I don't want it.
Yeah. You know what's interesting about that thought though? It's like, okay, if you got a gnarly looking face, and what I mean by that is like if you're ugly, and they took your face off, I wonder how much of your ugliness has to do with because beauty, the science behind beauty, if you want to put beauty in quotations, because everything's subjective, but the science behind what we think is beautiful has to do with symmetry. Mm-hmm. So if you took an Ugmo face on a skeleton on a skull that's like kind of asymmetrical, but then you put that ugly face on like a perfectly symmetrical skeleton head, would that make you hotter?
Or someone with incredible bone structure?
Yes,
right.
Yeah.
Wow, what if all of a sudden you had like a chin?
I personally don't use ugly's not part of my vocabulary.
I
choose not to say ugly.
You motherfucker.
Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
Oh,
I mean, you are right. You are right about that to a degree, but you cannot deny that like someone with a really symmetrical, like Halle, they did. I think in this study they referred to Halle Berry. The reason why Halle Berry looks so beautiful is because she apparently. Mathematically, she has a perfectly symmetrical face.
Wow.
Which I do not have. Like, I'm fucking
You're
I'm
ugly
working
as
with what I
shit.
got. I'm working with what I got here, and it ain't symmetry. I'll tell you that much.
Is it just symmetrical? Like you draw a line down the middle, and no matter like how warped and distorted your bone structure is or whatever on one side, if it maps exactly, it's like, is that the type of person that you look at and you go, there's something unique or interesting about that person?
Well, I'm sure there's like,
they're
there's
really
like,
good looking.
I'm sure there's different quadrants that like would hold the symmetry. But like, it wouldn't just be like,
it's just not left and right. It's
it's probably all of it. You know,
because if you ever do that filter on the camera where it mirrors the exact, like you look weird as shit.
You do look
I
weird.
find like when you have that perfect symmetry, it looks odd.
Yeah. But you got like, you got someone who has like one nostril a little smaller than the other. And then they got like, maybe a cheekbone that's like nominally higher than the other side, but you can't even tell. But
my balls are like
deep
that.
Down. You have balls that are perfectly symmetrical. Just two perfectly formed eggs.
That's the same thing with breasts. Many women's breasts are not perfectly symmetrical or the exact same.
There's
shape,
always like
right?
one larger than the other, or one that like droops a little more than the other.
Yeah, mine are like this.
Wow, that's people can't see this, but that seemed really dramatic the way that you did that. I got one down by my knee, one up by my ear.
This is
trying to find a bra is really hard, but I've managed.
Yeah,
I like that now that we're doing YouTube, and people can see this on video. I like that we are being more inclusive to audio listeners, and it reminds me of Jared was telling you this the other day, but I love audio accessible features on things. And so like one example of that is a website.
Yeah.
And so websites now have images with alt text. It's been around for a while, but
like the guy standing. That's a good example, right? So we had this guy on the podcast, Guy Standing. That's his name. And he had a photo on his Wikipedia page. And they did an entire Reply All episode on this. They did it. He does incredible work when it comes to basic income. That's what his entire life has been dedicated to. Mm-hmm. This Reply All episode had nothing to do with his work and only to do with his Wikipedia page. But the picture of Guy Standing is Guy standing, sitting in a chair. And the like descriptive was Guy standing, sitting. and people wanted to like change it, and it became this like sort of online fucking battle. Anyway,
but the cool thing about alt text is like even if there's an image without like a caption, you can caption the image in the metadata so that somebody using a screen reader can hear what is on the screen. And
tell her what you did for a photo of us on our website.
I've been making the Sick Boy site like full of Easter eggs for people who who are only listening to it, and it's like a photo of Taylor and Jeremie and Brian from the waist up. They are wearing clothes. You can imagine them without clothes if you'd like to. Because like those people can't see, so they're just seeing in their head anyway, right? So why not give them
the benefit see what they want to see.
Let them see what they want.
I know. Why are you looking, huh? Why are you looking at me?
I love it.
So here's an interesting story. A young man who was cut in half by a forklift says he's disappointed by how friends reacted.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so in 2019, laborer Lauren Shears nearly met his fate when he was involved in a freak forklift accident.
Shears. It's like he was born for a tap.
Might actually be Showers. Showers.
Oh, okay.
But let's go with Shears. Lauren Shears. A forklift accident saw him veer off a bridge while in the vehicle and fall 50 feet.
Holy shit.
Lauren from Wilsaw, Montana, United States.
This man, he was going to get cut in half. It was just a matter of time.
It's Wilsaw. But let's go with Wilsaw. Wilsaw, Montana, has spoken out since about the reactions to his accident, including whether or not his friends have been there for him since. Here's a photo of young Lauren. Lauren and his wife Sabia, not sure, conducted a YouTube live where they let followers ask them questions and invited them to chat. One user asked, "Do your friends still treat you the same way they used to before the accident? Are you happy, surprised, or disappointed by some of them?" Lauren replied, "I've been mostly disappointed by most of them, I'd say." Sabia continued, "I've been a little surprised by some of them." Lauren went on to explain that a couple of friends came out of the woodworks and have been really supportive. However, other friends totally reverted and have been reclusive, he added. But it's whatever to me, Lauren continued. I've got Sabia, and that's all I need. As well as reflecting on their friends' support since Lauren's accident, the couple have also spoken about how it's impacted their marriage. Going through this together has definitely strengthened a lot of aspects of our relationship. It has made us a lot more appreciative of the little things that we would used to take for granted as a couple before, Sabia explained. Lauren now has a very simple life now compared to what it used to be, noting, quote, there's a lot more laying around than before, which would make a lot of sense considering there's not a lot of walking around going on. It was about 3 months after the accident that I finally wrapped my head around how crazy and miraculous it really is for me to be alive, he admitted. Lauren explained how he and Sabia plan to, quote, travel the world and then have some kids. The couple want to, quote, teach them to be better people than we are. So a pretty simplistic life.
It's interesting. Like that makes me think of conversations that I would have with Brandon. So Brandon was 19 when, for people who aren't familiar with the podcast, we had a guest on the show early on named Brandon Thomas, who had an osteosarcoma and had his leg amputated, and he was 19 years old, and he would oftentimes talk about how we became really good friends, and he would oftentimes talk about how a lot of his friends from high school that he thought were friends didn't really stick around much or weren't really there for him throughout his like surgery and recovery process.
We've heard from a lot of people on the show that have kind of said the exact same sentiments.
Yeah, I feel like I understand it in the sense that, like, man, when I was 19, it was really hard for me to be like emotionally, I guess, be vulnerable and be honest with how I felt about certain things, and to show up for somebody who's going through something really tough like that. It does take a lot of like strength to step into that role, because it is, can be challenging,
especially when you're that young.
Yeah. And so I think it's easier for those people to, like, send a text every once in a while and say, like, hey, how's it going, buddy? Rather than like actually showing up in a way that is helpful for,
I mean, like, I think person. I get what you're saying, and I agree. But it's also a dick move. It's like,
I totally agree. I think it's a dick move too.
Totally. But I don't think the dick move comes from a place of wanting to be a dick. I think the dick move comes from a place of not being able to handle the realities of life.
Yeah.
And, it's like when you talk to people about death, some people are like, yeah, fuck yeah, let's talk about it. But then some people are just like, oh, absolutely not. Like, and don't even fucking attempt to talk to me about that, because that makes me uncomfortable. And so when friends get sick or when friends go through an accident, it really does kind of filter out those folks in your life that don't have the resolve to be there for you. And
man, I didn't know that like my dad was like that until I had a recent conversation with him. So like I've always sort of thought of my dad as like somebody who's like not really comfortable having like a warm emotional conversation. And a few weeks ago I was talking to him on the phone, and my grandmother had a stroke and she was in the hospital, and I was like, hey, is she gonna be able to go back home? And he was like, no, she's probably gonna have to go into a home now. And he was like, yeah, I mean, we've been sort of like expecting this for a while. They're getting old. Like, your grandparents are in their 90s, and so like, this is part of life. And I was like, wow, like, yeah, we're having a real conversation about this. And then I was like, how do you feel? Are you sad? And he was like, no, I don't really get that sad. There's no point in getting sad about it. And I was like, your mom is dying, dude. Like, it's okay. Like, it's okay to be sad. And whether you feel like prepared and you've accepted that and you've gone through this sort of like pre-grieving process, I don't really care who you are. I think that you're still going to grieve through that experience. And I mean, like, the amount of things that I've talked about in therapy where I'm like, oh, this isn't a traumatic experience. And then I like start to dig into it. And I'm like, oh, fuck, I do feel that way about that thing. And like, that does affect me in this way. And so, it's weird, having a conversation with a parent and you're trying to go to that place with them and they feel, it feels like they're resistant to it.
I think that's partly why when the Queen died, people lost their shit, because it was like something that was like a presence, like on our money and like in so many like random small ways that all of a sudden was gone. And like,
Yeah.
I didn't really care. I was like, oh, whoa. But so many people, I was a bit surprised by how many people, especially in Canada, were so put out by it and were like actually like feeling a sense of grief for it. And I was like, wow, I wonder if it was kind of like a wake up call in a really, really small way where it's like there's nothing permanent, including like
I mean, you
her,
see that
you know?
whenever a celebrity dies, you see that.
But I wonder if that is people who are so bottled up with their own grief that like don't feel comfortable expressing it towards their loved ones because they're uncomfortable with like how that feels, that when they see something like that happen that feels a little bit removed from them, they project onto it because it's like this easier outlet where it's like, oh, like I can feel that way and people aren't going to question, like dig too deep into it or whatever. But like, if you're like, I guess I think of, like when you're talking about the experience that you were talking about at the start of, the show today, but using Narcan and finding this guy, like immediately I project my experience onto that. And I'm not feeling what you felt. I'm feeling what I felt from a past experience. And so like when you're looking at death in any sort of way, the way that the Queen's death was so publicized and you're actually watching it. When's the last time you watched a funeral? Like on TV or in person? And there's probably like sort of leftover emotions from experiences like that you've had that you're like projecting, or people project onto those.
I felt that with Gord Downey's death. You know, that was one for me that like unearthed shit where I went, like I think there's some stuff I got to like dig into here and kind of examine my own life. Here's an interesting little story. So the first province to regulate psychedelics for therapy has been announced. It hasn't happened yet, but it's going to happen. Can you guess which province will be the first province to regulate psychedelics for therapy?
The most unlikely one.
Yep.
Really?
Who do you
think
you
know?
You must know.
Alberta.
You know what? My first guess was BC, and then I thought Alberta because it's so unlikely that it's likely because they as a province are getting to a place where they're like, fuck you, Canada.
Totally.
And so I see it. I see it.
It's Alberta, right?
That's a good way of thinking it. It is. Yeah. Alberta will become the first Canadian jurisdiction to regulate the use of psychedelic drugs for people in therapy. The province announced last Wednesday. Associate Minister of Health and Addictions, Mike Ellis, also introduced new rules to limit who can prescribe high-potency drugs to people with difficult-to-treat opioid addictions. The changes are aimed at protecting the public, ensuring that patients receive high standards of care and preventing risky drugs from inadvertently ending up on the streets. Dr. Rob Tangway, a psychiatrist who specializes in addiction medicine and pain medicine, said patients are vulnerable while taking psychedelics and need protection. He said, quote, "The risk is much lower with a regulated psychologist who is registered with their college than someone who printed a certificate off the internet and then went onto the internet to advertise, quote, 'I'm a psychedelic therapist, come see me.'" Tanguay said at a news conference in Edmonton on Thursday. Researchers are also are increasingly studying the use of psychedelic drugs like psilocybin, LSD, and ketamine to help people with post-traumatic stress disorder, anxiety, or depression resistant to conventional treatments, which we've talked about at length on the show. Although these drugs are illegal in Canada, doctors and researchers can apply to Health Canada to use them in clinical trials, get special access for therapy, or seek an exemption that's in the public interest. Health Canada was unable to provide information on Wednesday about how many people are authorized to prescribe the drugs. Advocates for their use have previously said gaining permission is rare, which also we've talked about. They're not making it easy for folks to have that ability to prescribe.
This just makes me think that in 20 years, these drugs will be legal everywhere.
Oh yeah.
It's just like,
maybe not all of them, but like I could see mushrooms for sure being like, you know, I walked in the other day to buy weed for like CBD gummies, sleep gummies for Kira. And every time I go to the NSLC to buy weed, I'm always like, you know, they're always so helpful. And then I pay for it and they give it to me and they smile and they say, "See you later." And I go, isn't this funny? Like, isn't this so funny? Like, this could be mushrooms in 5 years. Like, this is so great.
But it seems, I mean, the negative aspects of legalizing it like it seems so obvious that it seems like everybody knows this now. Like it's not
just
it
like
doesn't have a good effect
just like
on society.
Just
right?
like we knew with weed before weed
exactly.
got legalized.
It's just
like we all knew.
But like it feels like we're at that point where societally we agree.
Yeah.
It's just like the law takes longer to catch up. Right? Like like in 20 years this will all be this will be crazy that we even went through this last like 100 years of of prohibition.
Hopefully, fingers crossed that we get to that point. I think that would be really important.
Yeah. Also, I just want to say I love Alberta, specifically Edmonton. I love you guys.
I do too. I do too.
We owe you guys a few I love yous. We love you.
We do. Here's a story. This one's kind of intense. So buckle up.
Fuck.
Woman spends 3 days in hospital after dog pooed on her face while she slept.
Ew.
Here's the woman, and here's the poo.
No. But she took a picture of it?
Yeah.
What?
A woman was hospitalized for 3 days after her beloved pet pooch did a shite on her face while she slept. Amanda Gomo from Bristol was enjoying one of her proper good afternoon naps. You know, the ones where you're out for the count and your mouth is wide open. And her chihuahua, Belle, decided to join her. But as the 51-year-old was snoozing, little Belle came down with the squirts and violently burst a diarrhea, stirred Amanda from her slumber in the worst way possible. She said, quote, "I was having my afternoon nap with Belle, like I always do, when I suddenly felt something squirt in my mouth," the mom of 3 recalled. "I rushed to the bathroom and my son was in the shower, so before I washed it out, I had time to take a quick snap. It was disgusting, and I was hurling violently for hours after. I just couldn't get the taste out of my mouth. Ugh."
Wait. Is that not the craziest part of this whole article? That she waited for her son to finish.
I'd be like, get out.
I'd either kick the door in or I would go to the kitchen.
Go to the sink.
The garden hose.
Amanda's daughter took Belle to the vet, and the pup was diagnosed with a nasty stomach bug and put on antibiotics. However, this was not the end of the grim ordeal for Amanda. In fact, it was far from it. Later that day, she started displaying the same symptoms as Belle, so she called 111, which is not 911. That is, I guess, what they do over in Bristol. 111. And an ambulance was sent to her home. Paramedics prescribed her painkillers for her stomach cramps and instructed her to drink lots of water to flush out any potential infection. But after their visit, her symptoms became progressively worse, and 48 hours later, Amanda's cramps spread all over her body. Amanda's mom then rang 999, which, again, not 911. Over in Bristol, it's 999. And they dispatch another ambulance. I mean, you can call 999, 111, 000, 555, 333.
What happens when you call 666?
Cenobites show up and they fuck you to death.
Sick.
So another ambulance came, and this time she was transported to Bristol Royal Infirmary and immediately hooked up to a drip. There, doctors diagnosed Amanda with a gastrointestinal infection that had been passed through Belle's feces into her mouth days earlier. She was kept under observation for 3 days while they rehydrated her with the electrolytes and glucose. Amanda, who has Crohn's disease, said, "From the moment I got ill to when I was put on the drip, I couldn't eat a thing. The cramps got worse and worse until I could feel them all over my body, even in my legs. They sent an ambulance the second time, and I was so dehydrated from being sick and having diarrhea that my kidneys had shriveled to half their size."
The Crohn's bit actually makes a lot of sense because, I can see how she would be familiar with feces in a way that she would be comfortable having it on her face for an extended period of time. That's got to be like the only way.
Yeah.
Like you're so familiar with diarrhea that that makes sense. Do you know what the most disgusting dog diarrhea in general is like? The worst.
It's pretty bad.
And the smell of it is
so hard to pick up.
I was when I was
so hard to pick up.
When I used to do Rover. I don't know if I've told you guys this story before, but I was looking after these really old pugs.
Yeah.
And they were
Rover's
on,
like a dog walking, dog sitting app.
And
like
I was staying at
Airbnb.
this like guy's house watching his two like 14-year-old dogs, and he was basically told me before I dog sat for them that like he was like, if they die, I understand it's not your fault. Like they were that
my
old.
God.
And,
wow. They were really on their last leg.
I was working in an office at the time, and I was like, it was like 5 o'clock, and I still had work to do, so I was running late getting home, and I had to take these dogs out, and on the way home, I got these really bad stomach cramps. Like I had to take a really bad shit, and so I was like racing home and I'm like stuck in traffic. And I finally get home. It's like 6:00 and the dogs have been inside like all day. And I really should have taken them out.
Puppies.
And so I run inside and the dog's like,
the dog's like, podcast.
The dog's like, it wasn't that long. Like I had explained to him how long I would be in the office and he was like, that's fine. And so the dog was so old it didn't like walk or do anything, and the only thing it did was shit. But I ran inside. Like as soon as I got home, I ran inside, and the dog saw me. And I was like, "I'll take you outside. I just really gotta like my stomach." And I just ran into the bathroom and sat on the toilet, and the dog walked in front of me on the toilet and just looked at me and just had diarrhea all over the floor in front of me while I was also taking shit. And
was he making eye contact?
Yeah, he was. And the smell of it. And I'm like,
you know why they do that? There's a reason why dogs make eye contact with you when you shit.
For their safety.
When they shit. Yeah. Because they're looking at you going, I am vulnerable right now. So if any like hawk comes down to like snatch me up or another dog comes to fuck me up, I need you to step in.
Really?
So they're looking at you to be like, please keep me safe while I'm vulnerable because poop's coming out of me.
Because I like to make eye contact with my cat when he's shitting, but he doesn't like it.
That's so I like to make eye contact with Kira when I shit and she doesn't like it.
Cats are evil. That's why.
Take it back.
You have a dog.
I love cats. I do. Contrary to everyone else's belief. Well, here let's cap this week off with a top 10 list because Brian, I know how much you love them.
Love them.
10 worst ways to die.
Can you do it more TikTok-y?
10 worst ways to die.
Perfect.
Right. Here's number 10. Starve to death.
Whoa.
That's number 10.
Yeah, it takes a long time.
It's only going to get worse. This is in order of worst, like worst to worst.
Is thirsty to death on this?
No.
I can't wait to see what number 1 is.
You can't. Number 10, this is coming from stuff you should know. Starve to death. So for many of us, eating is pretty much the best part of any day. It serves to reason that not eating in any capacity would be a horrible way to live life. Even worse, though, is depriving your body of food to the point of death. First of all, a body can live for a surprising 1 to 3 months without food.
Whoa.
Although foods like liquid, like water or even coffee must be taken. But what a miserable couple of months they would be. After less than a week, the body begins to develop dangerous symptoms as it begins to feed off stored fat for energy. The liver begins to panic first, producing toxins that can be harmful in large quantities. Before a month is up, you're losing about 18% of your starting weight.
Whoa.
And then, of course, your body begins to consume its own muscle and organs to be sated with energy. You can prolong the starvation process by ingesting much needed salt, but it's hard to deny how miserable your final days would be.
Oh, man, right? that is pretty bad.
That's bad.
Mm-hmm.
It is only number 10.
It's only number 10. It gets way worse.
I'm curious to decide. So at the end of this, we should all decide which way we would
prefer.
Yeah, prefer to
that's
die.
good.
Because at least in all the other ways you're about to name, you get snacks.
Yes, that's right. You get to eat.
You have snacks.
Yeah,
maybe. We'll see.
This one you get snacks to a certain degree, and then the snacks run out. Adrift at sea.
You have to say number 9.
Number 9. Adrift at sea. TikTok, right?
Put like some gull sounds.
Yeah, that's a really good idea.
Here's the thing about the worst way to die. Some of them don't sound that bad if you forget that you die in the end. Case in point, being adrift at sea. Sure, you might be thinking being adrift at sea sounds miserable, but at least you have the hope that a passing cruise ship will spot you or that a mermaid will befriend you and have sex with you and teach you how to breathe underwater. I added the sex part.
I was going to say.
We all have our fantasies. But we're not talking about the 10 coolest ways to get rescued, remember. So reading through tales of those lost at sea, some of them don't have the luxury of having a boat and are just bobbing in open water. You start to realize how crushing it must be to be surrounded by endless possibilities for demise. Will it be a shark that takes a bite out of you or chomps your boat, which leaves you thrashing in the water waiting for the shark to return? Will it be starvation, which was number 10? Will it be hypothermia after your boat capsizes in the storm? The possibilities are endless, awful, and the only thing left to think about, which is why being adrift at sea is safely on our list of worst ways to die. That is pretty bad. Like, you know, the thought of dying while you're dying, that's scary.
I would already rather be adrift at sea than starve to death. Because like the sense of hope.
Yeah, I don't know.
The sense of hope is what keeps you like, as if I was.
But the sense of hope dwindles so fucking quickly.
And you don't know what's going to get you. And I would rather just know what's killing me.
Yeah, I'd rather go, well, I'm starving to death.
Yeah.
Then for me to go, well, I could starve to death, but I also could get half eaten by a shark and then starve to death.
You guys have glass half empty mentalities.
All right, well, this one sounds pretty bad. But is it number 8? I don't know. Number 8, fall into a volcano.
This is comical.
Now, bear with us here. Falling into a volcano, you say. Sure, that sounds bad, but you're pretty much dead. Dead before you can blink, right? No, not right.
What?
Well, because of the relative density of lava, you'll be delighted to know that if you were to fall into a volcano, Gollum style, you will probably not be swallowed like a rock plopping into water. Instead, you will land on the top of the lava with a soft little hiss. Or not. But I don't know about the hiss. And then basically burst into flame. Which burning to death is bad. But to land in a volcano, land in lava, hang out in lava for, 5 seconds, and then burst into flame. So if burning on top of the lava crust isn't bad enough for you, you'll be glad to know that another scientist tested this theory by throwing a 66-pound bag of food into a volcano to discover, hooray, sometimes the crust can be penetrated by bags of organic matter, i.e. humans. So if you're really looking for a miserable way to die, jumping into a volcano might be the way to do it. So,
whoa. That is way gnarlier than I thought it would be.
It would be pretty bad.
Because my
especially
initial
if you didn't
reaction
land
was,
head first.
Yeah.
You know, if you landed with your face right into the lava and you somehow even penetrated up to your eyeballs.
Shut the power off.
I mean, that's, you're just lights
you're
out.
done.
Yeah.
Lights out, you know?
If you had to jump off a building, which I'm assuming falling from heights is one of these.
Nope.
It should be. But
no, it should not be. No.
You don't think so?
I would 100% over everything on this list, I would jump.
Probably quicker.
If you had to jump,
way quicker.
If you had to jump, though, I'd rather.
It'd be scary as shit for whatever time it takes for you to get terminal velocity.
It actually feels like a long time. Like I face planted down a staircase, and that was just one story.
Yeah.
And I had enough time to think, "Wow, this is gonna suck." Before I hit the bottom.
Yeah. Now you jump out of the CN Tower, you're like, "Wow, this is gonna suck."
Yeah.
Holy, this sucks.
And then you read the paper, and then you land.
Yeah.
Would you, if you had to jump though, considering it's not on the list, we might as well just dig into this for a second. If you had to jump from a 30-story building, and you knew you were gonna die, how would you approach the concrete?
Head first.
Would you do that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like
I'd missile into the fucking
I'm a glass half full type of guy.
You try and land on your butt?
I would be. I'd probably maybe flat too.
Yeah,
and I'd be flapping my arms.
Yeah.
Flapping my arms as hard as I could. I mean, birds.
I'd actually, you know what I would do? I would, because I know I'm going to die. So there's no hope. So I'm going to make sure I die quick. I'd tuck my knees up into my chin and then try to land on my feet. So it just pops my head off.
Oh,
you just gotta relax. That's how people survive bad falls. They just stay limp.
Yeah, cats survive.
They just stay limp, and then your body, because where you hurt yourself is where you try to break your fall.
Yeah.
Then all of the shock gets absorbed by one part of your body. Like for me, when I broke my wrist when I fell down the stairs. So because I tried, I guess, to break my fall with my hand. And then I broke my nose too.
I'll tell you right now though, you relax jumping 30 stories.
You're fucking dead.
But anyway. You broke your wrist, but didn't that also absorb some of the impact? Couldn't it have been worse?
Could have been your spine.
It could have been way worse. I could have broken my neck, my teeth, but I just broke my wrist and my nose. Right. But I will say, that was kind of the more impactful parts of my injuries. But I was bruised all over. I had a bruise I remember I had a big bruise on my chin for weeks. I had 2 black eyes. It hurt to move for a few days. It was not cute. I would really wanted a nose job though, because my nose was broken just bad enough that they thought I might need one, and I was like, "Oh,
do it,
go for it."
Number 7, sacrificed.
What?
Whoa.
Yeah.
That's an option?
So imagine this. You're not only going to die, but you have to believe or pretend that you're being ritualistically killed because you're a perfectly beautiful and physically unblemished specimen. Unfair. And with that, we come to human sacrifice, another worst way to die. In this case, we're talking about the Incan tradition of human sacrifice, usually involving a child's chief. Human sacrifice was a pretty cold affair, literally, actually. The ritual would take place high on an Andes summit. They feed the victims some liquor, however, the day of the ritual, presumably to arm them with a little against the weather and pain. Archaeologists aren't too sure how painful a death the victims encountered. Many of them do have skull fractures, which leads them to believe if they were not killed by the blow, they were at least knocked out before they died of exposure, which, considering the gruesome nature of this process, still seems like cold comfort.
Wait, so they would just like bludgeon them and then leave them
out in the like up on a fucking mountain.
That's pretty anticlimactic.
Yeah.
But human sacrifice is out of most of our wheelhouses. Let's all ruminate darkly on something most of us can relate to: dying a horrible death in a fiery plane crash. So which is number 6, plane crash. But the sacrifice thing. I mean, there's other there's other sacrifices that I know of. Like the Mayans would sacrifice people by cutting out their heart, their beating heart, and hold their beating heart up to the crowd.
How long would they live without their heart?
Not long.
Yeah, like seconds.
You're going out pretty quick.
Yeah,
but I mean, having your heart cut out.
Yeah,
that's bad. That's bad.
Like, would that be considered human sacrifice? Though?
Oh, yeah.
Would you classify that in the same?
Oh yeah, it was
in the same.
Yeah,
category?
It was happening in a sacrificial manner.
Because personally, I would rather die by human sacrifice than the lava.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I'm with you on that. Yep.
It's way more metal.
But a plane crash. This one. I mean, this one's pretty scary. So let's just get the awful facts straight. So you know what you're dealing with when a plane starts to go down. First of all, you're probably about 6 miles in the sky if you're in a real free fall. Hypoxia might set in, and you'll be unconscious for roughly the first mile of this fall because of lack of oxygen. But then you'll wake up, okay, to discover that you're still plunging 120 miles per hour and still have a full 2 or 3 minutes to go. From about 30,000 feet, cruising altitude to the very hard and unforgiving ground. Maybe the worst part of a plane crash is that it's a common fear as well. Let's be honest, the worst way to die is a deeply personal choice. If you fear air travel, your imagination soars about sputtering engines, clipped wings, and the like. If you if you fear, the next thing we'll read on. But I had this thought the other day. I don't get scared on planes. It's an unreasonable fear to have. It's possible. I mean, obviously it's possible, but like, what's the point of just being like,
Yeah.
Do you get fucking terrified every time you get in your car? Because you're more likely to die then.
Yeah.
You know, so freaking out in the plane, it's like, all right, whatever.
I think it's a control thing, though. Like when you're driving,
You're driving.
But
even if you're a passenger in the car.
But
you know?
for me, that's why flying is less scary than driving. Because if I'm flying, there's nothing I can do. But if I'm driving, I'm a little bit more scared because I'm like, oh, what if I fuck up and I hurt someone else or myself?
That's glass half empty attitude there.
Well, when I was getting on the plane in California, you know, when you're like waiting in the line in that tube that gets you into the plane.
Yeah.
So I was in that lineup and I was stepping onto the plane, but again, the lineup's just like continuing. So I'm standing in that opening of the plane door, and I was looking at the plane, and I remember just like touching the nuts and bolts on the doorway, and I was like, man, there's a lot of fucking metal in here. Like if this thing crashed, you're better off to like pull a grenade and hold it close to you and hope the shrapnel doesn't like kill you.
But you would die instantaneously in a plane crash.
No, not necessarily.
Likely though.
Likely, but there's lots of plane crashes
yeah.
where people like survive the crash, but then don't survive, you know, the fire or the drowning.
You know, what would be the most, so like the scariest thing for me, like a plane crash would be scary, really like super scary to be in, obviously.
Yeah.
I'm not afraid of flying, but how badass would it feel to survive a plane crash?
Yeah.
Like if you survived a fucking plane
there's those like
smashing into the ground.
There's like those kids, the soccer team that survived the plane crash into the mountain, a bunch of them. And then they had to survive eating each other,
like Valerie who survived that plane crash.
That's right.
What's interesting about the plane crash thing though is that it seems to be mostly a mental fear, because it's like you're unconscious for a bit, but then it's like it seems to be more about the 2 to 3 minutes that you're just zooming towards your doom and there's nothing you can do about it.
That's the scary part.
Yeah.
Like imagine going, oh my God, we're going to crash. Oh, I feel dizzy. Pass out and then wake up and go, oh fuck, we're still crashing. Like that's bad.
But everything else is so physical. It's like interesting that this is more a mental thing.
Yeah.
Do you think not to like beat a dead horse on this, but like, do you think that within like 2 or 3 minutes that you'd eventually like resign yourself to the fact that you're going to die? Or do you think it's not long enough? Like, do you think after a minute of being like,
I think it's easy.
You'd finally be like,
no.
Oh, fuck.
No, I think it's easy to think that way, but you have to also consider like a plane full of people freaking out. It's going to be hard to chill when everybody around you is so not chill. You know what I mean? Like everybody's freaking out. You're going to be like, well, it's like when you're watching a comedy show and like you're not alone. Like when you watch comedy alone, it's like you kind of go. But when you're watching comedy with people and everybody's laughing, you're like, ha 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 ha.
Right.
If everybody else is freaking out, you're gonna be like, I gotta like top the freak out here.
Yeah.
It becomes a competition.
Do you think that like, because we'll never know this, but
I'll freak out more than you.
This is an interesting thing to ponder. Like, do you think, so imagine we could meet each other like in the afterlife and we're all meeting up and it's like, how did you go? And you could watch like the video of you dying, or like
a dog shit in my mouth.
Yeah, dog shit in my mouth.
I got sick for 3 days.
Go to the hospital.
Then I died. But do you think there is somebody who's in the history of the planet has been in like a fucking terrible plane accident that like has been falling for 3 minutes like that? Everybody's screaming around them and they're just like, guys, it's chill.
I know someone who would do that.
Who do you think?
Anybody that has Addison's disease.
Oh, right.
Because they'd be like, I can't even feel this. Like you guys are freaking out. I don't even know how to freak out.
I actually saw this.
So chill.
Speaking of TikToks, I saw this TikTok of this woman. This like it was called like the 405 Karen. It's this like woman driving down the highway. She's got her front right tire in her minivan is exploded. Her back hatch is all the way up, and the van's just cruising along. Sparks. And then the guy's filming her for
I hope I don't fuck up.
filming her for like 2 minutes, and then they pull up next to her on an off ramp on the stop sign, and they're like, "Dude, what the fuck? Your tires exploded. You're driving down the highway." And she's like,
"Huh?
What? Really?" And they're like, "Are you on Ambien? What type of drugs?" And she's like, "I didn't take any drugs." And then she gets out of the van. You could just see pills like all around her, and she's clearly just been super fucked up. But she would be chill on the plane crashing.
Here's number 5, and this one's horrendous. I can't believe it's only 5. Eaten by animals. Animals are great. Mm-hmm. Case in point, donut. They provide comfort and compassion and are a sense of humor. Also, they can kill you and eat you, which brings us to our next worst way to die. It's kind of a catch-all category because it turns out there are many, 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 many animals that are fine with noshing your pretty person. So, unlike other cats that will kill and eat you, lions, tigers, and so on, jaguars do not suffocate their prey by going for the neck. Instead, they use their elongated canines to bite through the temporal bones of their victim.
Whoa.
They bite the brain. Ouch. Not to be outdone, hyenas can hold their own in the cat-eating people contest. While they might shake and break the spine of a smaller prey, they hop to it with people-sized victims. When they have a victim prone, they start eating, even if the person-sized victim is completely and utterly conscious.
Whoa.
Bears will do the same thing. Pythons and anacondas do asphyxiate a person. The cause of death is generally cardiac arrest from a lack of oxygen. And yes, they belong on this particular page because they've also been known to occasionally swallow victims after they squeeze.
I think I could beat up an anaconda.
No. Have you ever like held a snake?
Yeah.
Their strength is
incredible.
Undeniable. It's
impressive.
Undeniable.
But if an anaconda was wrapping itself around me and squeezing me, I would just sink my fingers so far into its skin, I would just tear it apart.
No, you wouldn't. They're scales, dude. But fucking medieval body armor was based off of lizards.
Yeah, but have you seen a mom have her child trapped under a vehicle and use her superhuman strength to lift the vehicle
I don't know,
up?
man.
I would go Super Saiyan.
It's literally a giant, long rope muscle.
What animal scares you the most? Which one would you hate to be eaten by?
A bear, 100%. 100%.
When we were in Vancouver a few weeks ago,
bears,
I went for a hike in the woods,
Yeah.
and there was a bear in the area sign, and I was on my own.
And
I had headphones in, and I like after walking 5 minutes into the woods, I just felt this like eerie sort of terror come over me.
Yeah,
I took my headphones out, and I just kept walking, but I was like clapping and whistling the entire time because I was actually pretty afraid of it. Like a bear would be. Have you seen those videos on the internet of like people coming in contact with
and bears
bear or mountain lion
so fast.
Yeah.
Bears are like a bullet. Like they're so fast, you don't have a moment to think.
Yeah.
Mama bear.
Ooh.
No way. This one makes sense. Number 4, crushed to death.
Oh.
So you think animals eat you are bad?
That used to be like medieval torture. They just like put rocks on you till you died.
Wait till this. Even worse. Ancient Indian torture. They would get a elephant to execute you.
Whoa.
Stepped on by an elephant. Observed in the late 19th century, the punishment was brutal, execution by elephant. Note that first the criminal was tied to the leg of an elephant by his waist and then taken for a bloody trot around the city. After that, the criminal was made to kneel and place his head on a stone. The elephant crushed the accused's head with its foot. While being crushed, oh yeah, dude, for sure. While being crushed whole is awful, also consider the unpleasant alternative of dying after only an appendage has been crushed. Toxins build up at a crush site, including large amounts of potassium that can cause cardiac arrest and myoglobin, which can result in kidney failure, even after the object is removed. Dying from being crushed even after you've had the good fortune of getting out from under the object, which is definitely a worse way to die. Oh. Did I talk about the Painfortainment episode of Hardcore History on the show where I talked about being broken by the wheel?
No.
So there is this book that came out a number of years ago. I forget the name of it, but it's on my Christmas list just this year because I'm obsessed with this podcast episode, Hardcore History, which is called Painfortainment, and it's about the human history of viewing pain and death as a form of entertainment. Mm-hmm. So, in the medieval days, executions were happening, almost daily, for crimes that you steal an apple. Fuck it, we'll kill you. Like in England, they'll execute you. Outside of England, there were some really fucking weird execution techniques that were developed. And there's this book that was written. They found this ancient journal from an executioner. So he had written this journal, and it was his job. His job was to be the executioner in the town. And this book kind of chronicles the entire journal of this guy's career. Huh. And executioners are really interesting because they were basically like pariahs in society. Like it was bad luck to, like if we were grocery shopping and I was an executioner and I rubbed up against you, all of a sudden you are like convinced that you have bad luck, you're going to die, yada yada. So like they were like ousted and treated like really poorly, and people thought they were weird and kind of magical and hated them.
You know why? Because they probably were carrying around so much trauma.
Oh, for sure, dude. Yeah. So much trauma, right? So there was this technique in back in the, like the 14th, 15th, 16th century. And it was called being broken by the wheel or being broken on the wheel. Mm-hmm. So what they would do is they would take the victim or the prisoner, and they would strap them by their arms and legs. So there's 4 posts on the ground, and so they're kind of starfished out, arms and legs starfished out. The executioner would take a wheel, like the wheel of a wagon, and with that wheel he would slam it down, crushing all the joints of their arms, so their wrists, their elbow joints, their shoulder joints, all their fingers. And then he would do the other arm, and he would do the legs, the hips, the knees, the ankles, the feet. Now, by this time, you're just jello in your limbs.
Mm-hmm.
They would then, if
You'd still be alive at this point?
Yes, some of them would be. Now, if the executioner did not do what they would often sometimes do, which was then follow that up with crushing your sternum or your neck or your jaw. So if they didn't do that and you were still alive, what they would do, and they would do this even after they crushed your chest, they would then take that wheel, place it down on the ground, flat. They would take your body, place it on the wheel, and then thread your jello limbs through the spokes.
Oh, right.
So you're like this
I feel like you
fucking
did tell me about
octopus
this.
like
Yeah.
creature.
Whoa.
And then they would take that wheel, put it on a post that's like, 11 feet high, and then just leave it out there, like spinning, letting, the fucking birds pick away at you or whatever.
Dude,
That someone thought of that.
you know what's crazy is like,
That's
so
crazy.
So we could sit here and go like, oh, like intellectually, could you imagine that? And you think about it.
I can't.
But
I actually can't imagine
But
that.
like even
It's so beyond my scope of understanding.
don't just imagine it for a second though. Like think of taking this table and taking it to my limbs and you
just
literally taking this and
crushing you.
crushing my limbs and
then wrapping
then-
you around the table like some weird fucking party trick. Okay. Let's move on to the next one.
Okay.
Number 3, freeze to death.
Seems
Mm-hmm.
mild, to be honest.
Hypothermia or freezing to death isn't quite as exotic as being executed by an elephant, but it certainly belongs on this list as it combines a slow struggle with pain and death. The body freezes in gradual stages. While we start out at a normal 98 or so degrees Fahrenheit, as the body cools, we start shivering. That's a sign that your muscles are beginning to realize that we need to generate heat, stat. When no heat is supplied, our muscles become stiff and wooden, which means our motor control and coordination go out the window. Note that if you're tumbling around making contact with the ground, you're probably getting colder. Your brain is also suffering. You can't think clearly or hold a thought, and then the shivering stops, which is very, very, very bad because now your body isn't even creating a cursory heat and your overall temperature plunges. Your body's organs and responses are slowed that it might actually appear that you're dead before you even are.
Mm-hmm.
Luckily, you do lose consciousness at some point, so you've got that going for you. Still, very unpleasant and typically drawn out way to go.
I heard that like when you start to get hypothermia, your skin starts to feel warm. Like it hurts to a certain point, then it's bad when it no longer hurts.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I feel like
being broken on the wheel would be way worse than being frozen to
oddly
death.
enough, number 2, torture.
Well,
Yeah.
No list of worst ways to die can be complete without acknowledging the psychopathic minds that came before us and created innovative, vulgar ways to be punished to death. Many ancient kingdoms and states were terrifically uptight about criminal offenses. And let's not forget that modern society still punishes people with torture and death too. But let's look at some particularly effective forms of death used back in the day. Sure, we're familiar with drawing and quartering from medieval England, but when it comes to torture, the Persian Empire was really in its own category of horror. One of the techniques required that the victim stay for days in a room filled with ash. At some point, after passing out from exhaustion, the lungs of the victim would fill with ash and they would suffocate on the matter. Terrible, right? Well, prepare yourself for the boats. The ancient Persian torture method required the victim to lie in a covered narrow boat with only the head showing. The face would be smeared with honey and milk, where flies would then swarm. Note that they would be fed often and regularly, so the person was soon swimming in their own filth, at which point maggots would hatch, at which point maggots would devour the body. One man was said to be in the tub for 17 days before decaying alive.
Whoa.
That's fucking gnarly. That is so gnarly.
Oh,
That's-
that's bad.
That's maybe the craziest thing.
That
I've
might be one of
ever
the
heard.
craziest things I've ever heard in my entire life.
And it's not number one.
It's not number 1. Ready? Number 1.
Oh.
Die of embarrassment.
This is the worst.
Huh?
This is the worst top 10 list ever.
We've certainly collected our share of horrific ways to go, but there's one more way that goes deserved to be on the worst list because it's preventable, and that's dying from embarrassment. So first, yes, it is possible to actually die from embarrassment. When stress and anxiety rise, which accompany embarrassment, a surge of adrenaline enters the bloodstream that could kill you. That's according to the American Heart Association. It's for this reason that people can undergo a cardiac reaction from not just embarrassment, but also fight or flight, or even a sexual response. But we're speaking of a different embarrassment. Too often people are too afraid or shy to get treatment or seek help for medical problems that they think are shameful or silly. While getting eaten by a python or being tortured is no way to go, do remember that the worst kind of death is one that, by all accounts, could have been prevented.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
Wow.
Pretty good for number one, right?
I know someone that functionally gave themselves that like destroyed their own pancreas because they refused to seek help for like abdominal pain, and it ended up getting so bad that like someone like their partner had to call like an ambulance, and then they were taken away and had their pancreas removed.
You know, I hate that is number one, but I also appreciate the like beautiful message.
I mean, it is, it's like,
it's a good message.
It's like the embarrassment of sharing your feelings, and then now those feelings penting up, and then, you put a fucking muzzle in your mouth and blow your head off. Like that's no way to go.
No.
That's years and years of fucking self-torture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what though? I do think personally,
I do think getting tortured to death would be worse. But
it's
pretty. Jumping in a volcano? I don't know. That sounds pretty bad.
I think torture shouldn't be on the list because torture, you could torture people by all different means of like all the other top 10 list items could be aspects of torture.
But the reason why torture is on the list isn't because of the gnarly ways of dying. It's the being tortured to death falling asleep in the plane and waking up in the plane. It's like it's inevitable. It's coming. And to be that guy 17 days of just being eaten by maggots, like that's
covered in your own shit.
Okay,
that's bad.
So barring like number one or number two of the other ones, without picking torture, like which one would you guys prefer?
Prefer,
yeah. If you had to choose one of the ways to go,
jumping into a volcano.
You would want to go by jumping into a volcano?
Yeah. Because if I accidentally fell into a volcano, that's not great. But if I was like, I have to die, so I'm going to jump in, at least I would jump in head first, and I know that probably wouldn't last that long.
That's true.
But if it was accidental, probably still jump into the volcano. I mean, it's pretty short. Like, I mean, that can't last more than a minute. Especially if you're face first. Like that's got to be quick.
Yeah.
You know? The heat would be so immense that if you just went,
it's funny.
You just burn your lungs out, and then you're like, okay, bye.
My brother was flying a drone over a volcano to take pictures like last year, and while he was flying it, he was flying over top, and all of a sudden, while he's watching through the video, he just saw the wings come down in front of the drone because
they're not supposed to do that.
The heat from the volcano coming up over top of it, just melted it, and it just disintegrated.
I mean, that's what I mean. Like if you were getting burned on a stake, like again, medieval torture, like burning someone on the stake. The quickest way for you to die is to allow that fire to get hot enough and close enough that you can just like die from asphyxiation by burning out your lungs. Here's another crazy thing about that podcast, the Pain Fortainment. They used to do so. I mean, it's such a long podcast, but they're talking about like there's so many different reasons why we were torturing people to death and executing people. A lot of it has to do with religion. There's all this fascinating stuff about religion, but there was once like there was like this sort of revolution in empathy, if you could even say that was happening in society at the time, where they were like, okay, we have to keep doing these executions to like prove a point, to like make sure people aren't being bad, but we also don't want to like torture these people so that it's so brutally fucking awful for their death. So they started doing this thing where secretly, without telling the town, they would sometimes strangle the victims before they would do whatever like weird execution they were doing.
That's so nice,
right? And so, but one of the things that they were doing outside of the strangling was when they were burning people, they would and they wouldn't tell people this, but they would take a sack of gunpowder and place it right underneath the person's head, like in like a necklace.
So just blow.
Yeah. So when it gets hot enough, it would just like pop their head off, and then they would die like with this quick bang, as opposed to, you know, being burned to death for whatever 3 or 4 or 5 minutes.
That's crazy.
Isn't that fucking crazy?
Lo, if you had to pick one of the ways to go, which one would you choose?
Plane crash. I fucking love plane crashes.
That would be gnarly.
I fucking love plane crashes. But I mean, that's a quick one too. You know, like the going down isn't, but once it happens, once the impact, I mean, you're kind of toast.
Oh yeah, because I mean, you might have enough time to like text or call someone, tell them you love them, kind of thing, and then but then also it's like,
you think the plane Wi-Fi is still working while it's going down?
No, but you just turn yourself off airplane mode. At a certain point, you're at a low enough altitude. You could probably send at least one.
You're at such a low altitude that I think it's like 3 seconds.
No,
that's got to be the quickest text.
Dude,
that's probably true.
You're like, I got 5G. Goodbye.
No, because when you're
not coming home.
If you go like, if you
I won't be home for dinner.
Feed the cat.
If you go skydiving and you're at 10,000 feet, you probably have cell service there, and it's 30 seconds of free fall at that. Until you can pull your chute at that height.
So,
so you probably have like 30 seconds of
and the plane's not going to go.
connectivity.
The plane's not going faster than. But at that height, it's 14,000 feet, and at that height, it does take a minute to get to terminal velocity, which you will already have been at.
Yeah.
But even still, that is quite
enough time to send a text, especially if you got 2 minutes to prep the text. On the way down.
Yeah. If you're If you didn't pass it, if you took your N95 off first and then put your oxygen mask on second, like you should. Then maybe you didn't.
Yeah. Also, if you took your phone and like put it into your gut and then used your body as a sort of like fleshy airbag,
like you then become the black box.
Well, your phone might be able to still send the message because you protected it on impact, so that it could still send the message afterwards too, right?
Yeah.
I would choose being adrift at sea. For sure.
Dude, you're psycho, dude.
No.
Did you not watch fucking Castaway?
For real.
Yeah.
It was brutal.
Yeah, I feel like I'd go delirious. I'd start seeing shit, and it wouldn't be as bad as like...
Seeing shit isn't fun when it's that type of seeing shit.
Yeah, to me.
God damn, that's a nightmare, dude. That's nightmare fuel.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah.
I'm going to die by my bladder exploding in a minute.
Honestly, I'd rather die having donuts shit in my mouth, really, if I had to choose. All right, folks, thanks for tuning in. Lo, thanks for joining. So it's such a fucking treat. Loved having you here. It's so fun.
Thanks for having me. Yeah, it was fun.
And thanks for listening, folks. If you want to support the podcast, join the Discord. The link is in the show notes. And of course, you can leave a rating or review on Apple Podcasts, or just leave a little rating on the Spotify mobile app. And if you want to chime in, how would you want to die? info@sickboypodcast.com. Let us know. We will read it on the show, because I would love to kind of keep this rolling for the next few weeks. I think this is fascinating.
Hell yeah. And you can also find out more about the podcast on our website, which we've just updated, sickboypodcast.com. And also, we're obviously on TikTok, posting a lot of this great top 10 content over there. So check us out on TikTok.
Go see how TikTok-y I can be.
Yeah. I'm editing.
I don't know why I didn't do why I didn't do it like this. Top 10 ways you can die.
Way one.
Yeah.
Give it to me right now. I'll cut it in. And a huge thank you to Rich O'Coin for the theme music, and Jeff Lonis.
He's on tour right now, folks. If Rich is coming to your town with Tupperware Remix Party, check it out.
Yeah, and check it out, you Europeans, because I think he's doing some shows overseas too.
Dublin. He's coming over to Dublin.
Yeah. That's all I got.
That is it for this week.
I'm Brian.
I'm Lauren.
And I'm Jeremie, and this is Sick.